that a prophet is in our midst. And when I speak of a prophet, I'm not just talking about the preacher person. I'm talking about the preacher person and the congregation. The church is a prophet, a mouthpiece through which God speaks to the community. The crux of our message this morning centers around the response of a large crowd of people. A crowd of people who had gathered around Jesus in response to a miracle that Jesus had just performed. The crowd in verse 16 of this passage exclaims rather emphatically that a great prophet has appeared among us. In a very real sense, their response to Jesus' ministry is nothing less than phenomenal. And the reason it is so phenomenal is that because of the way the prophets were generally perceived and acknowledged in the times of Jesus. There are those who would argue, that this 16th verse, what makes it so important to our understanding of the text, is that it is in this verse that we are introduced to what I like to call the radical side of the ministry of Jesus. We introduce to an idea of radical ministry. Radical ministry. Now, I know that there are people who don't like the term or the word radical. And if you don't like it, you need to find another one. That's your business. But this verse clearly introduces us to a radical nature of Jesus' ministry. And not only does it introduce us to the radical side of Jesus' ministry, but in a way it tells us how Jesus was preparing the disciples to engage themselves in a radical form of ministry. I'll tell you, our world today is suffering from a lack of men and women who will be radical or who will take a radical approach to ministry. Too many of us in the church are too calm, too casual, too relaxed, too laid back for God to do anything with us. Jesus was preparing the 12. His ministry was a radical ministry, and he was preparing the 12 to engage themselves in a radical ministry. His ministry, he was attempting to reach out to others and to include others. In actuality, a careful study of this passage will reveal to us a new way of understanding and envisioning the significance of radical ministry. Jesus' ministry was, in fact, a ministry that was used by God to help his disciples, watch this, embrace the visionary aspect and the missional nature of Christian ministry. Authentic ministry ought to be about something. You're not going to get anywhere. You're not going to appreciate the church if you don't understand that the church ought to be about something. We ought not just gather here week after week, year after year for the sake of gathering. People gather everywhere. They gather at Walmart and they gather at Target. When people come to church, They come to ready themselves to be used in the kingdom building enterprise. When we go to church, we ought to go to church prepared to be challenged, to be radical in the community, to be radical in terms of our witness. We ought to be prepared to not only be different, but to participate in making a difference in the lives of other people. Among those who feel called to Christian ministry, there is a renewed interest, and I'm happy to say it because I'm learning this over the last couple of years as I've been invited to New York Theological Seminary for the second year in a row to talk with their graduates and their senior graduating class about prophetic ministry, the prophetic side of ministry.